Hi YouTubers, and welcome back to DonnyBoy73, and welcome back to another episode of Small Engines Questions and Answers for Friday, January 27th. And before I get started, I want to welcome all my new subscribers today, and if you're not sure of what this program is about, well, what I do is every Friday I answer questions that my viewers send me throughout the week. So you never know, your question may be answered in one of these episodes. And I also want to thank all the YouTubers who responded on the subject as to why you should charge your battery on the lowest amp setting. Well, what I got out of that is that if you charge it on the highest amp setting, you're going to overheat the cells in the battery, and the battery's not going to last as long as it should. You're going to wear it out prematurely. So by charging it on a low amp, it's charging nice and slow, it's not overheating the cells, and your battery will last its full lifetime. So thanks again, guys. Now in the first question today, a YouTuber emailed me the other day saying he bought a brand new bar and chain for his chainsaw, and when he puts it on the chainsaw, tightens up the bolts, the chain won't turn after that. And he also made sure that the chain brake was off. This is the chain brake. When it's pulled toward you, it's off. If it's forward and you hear a click, then it's on. You cannot move the chain, so always make sure it's back. Obviously that's not the issue with his chainsaw, but I'm going to tell you a few tips here for what to look for when you buy a new bar for your chainsaw. To avoid the most problems for your chainsaw, always buy an OEM bar if possible. Now what I've noticed with aftermarket bars on chainsaws is that sometimes you do get the correct bar for your saw, and even though you have done so, the gap here in the bar will be a bit smaller than what an OEM bar would be. I've had this problem happen a lot. You put your chain in there and it's too tight to turn. You just cannot move the chain. Sometimes I've seen guys ream out the center here where the groove is to make it a bit larger so that their chain would turn. But the main issue I find is sometimes these aftermarket bars aren't designed the best, even though they're supposed to be a copy of the OEM bar. It could be because the metal is a bit soft or everything's not as strong inside here. And again, when you tighten up the nuts, it squeezes the bar and tightens up the chain in it. Sometimes you can turn the chain in the bar before you put it on the saw, but as soon as you put it on and tighten up the two nuts here, you can't turn it anymore. And these nuts here have to be tight. You shouldn't keep them loose because the chain won't turn if the nuts are tight. They have to be tight. So what I suggest doing is you can ream out this part of the bar here, only the back end where it's bolted on the saw. I don't like doing that anyways. Usually if I get a problem like that, I just bring the bar back and get another make. I don't like messing around with stuff like that when it comes to chainsaws, but I have seen guys do it and it did work well for them. Sometimes too the chain might be tight at first in the saw, but as long as you can turn it, that's okay. And over time from using the chainsaw, the chain will get nice and loose and will turn easily inside the bar. But you don't want to use a chainsaw if the chain is really hard to turn because you could end up messing up your engine. Your chain has to be easy to turn like this. This is a brand new bar and chain. It is an aftermarket. It's made by Windsor. But with both bolts here tight, I can still turn the chain. Over time it's probably going to get a bit easier because it's still brand new. And if it's too much work for you to try to jimmy it, just bring it back, get your money, make sure to keep it in good shape, don't scratch it up or anything, and they will give you your money back and you can buy either an OEM or buy a different make of bar. My next question today is in regards to the carburetors on the older Briggs & Stratton engines on snowblowers. This is the exact same carburetor that was on the Lawn Boy snowblower video that I posted a while ago. And the question I get a lot about these carburetors, what do you do when they continually leak gas? What could be the issue or the problem? Well, 9 times out of 10, it's the needle and seat. That's what's causing the carburetor to leak continually. Sometimes you can get away by just replacing the needle and sanding the inside of the seat with a 600 grit emery sandpaper. That may resolve the issue. If not, you would have to get a new seat. And if I remember correctly, the seat has to be pulled out and pressed back in. Or you could just install a fuel shutoff valve between the fuel tank and the carburetor and you turn it off when you're done using your machine. That works good as well. And yes, these carburetors are notoriously known for leaking gas like that. Every mechanic I talk to, especially the older mechanics, all say the same thing. They all tell me that it's really aggravating. Even after working on them for hours, they'll still have the same problem. But you can try replacing the needle, as I mentioned earlier, and sanding the seat with a 600 grit emery sandpaper. That might resolve the issue for you. Or get a used carburetor, or try to buy a brand new seat and replace it. Another question I got the other day is a YouTuber asked me, can I just remove the augers only from my snowblower because I want to paint down inside there? The YouTuber doesn't want to have to remove all the impeller and rip the snowblower in half, so that's why he asked me that question. Well, unfortunately, you cannot just remove the augers without removing the impeller in the back as well. This is the impeller over here, down in the back, and these are the augers. And I can see how convenient it would be if you could only remove the augers, because then you could go and paint inside your snowblower to prevent it from rusting, and it would save you a lot of work. But that's not the case. As you can see, the auger shaft is bolted at each end of the snowblower, and it's all connected with the impeller. The only way you could remove the augers only on this snowblower is if you could reach down inside here and remove the 2 roll pins over here. And believe me, you won't have much room to work in there. I've tried it once before, but it's a complete waste of time. It will take you a lot less time to remove the 3 bolts on each side of the auger shaft, splitting the snowblower in half, and then removing the auger pulley, and then pulling the whole assembly out of the shell. This is typically what it would look like. You would end up having to take off this pulley from the shaft over here, and then everything would be ready to pull right out. I do have videos that show how to do this on an NTD snowblower, which would be pretty well the same for all snowblowers out there. I'll post a link below this video so you can refer to that. Last week I talked about these little 4 to 5 horsepower Tecumseh engines on snowblowers, and I talked about how I was having a lot of problems with these in regards to a leaking exhaust valve. Well, a YouTuber asked me, when you do that, do you actually lap the valve at the same time? Well, the answer to that is yes. I actually lap the valves because I've got the engine all apart anyways, and usually they need it. And usually what I end up doing too is grinding the back of the valve here a bit. This is not a valve from that engine, but it's a valve from another engine. It's all the same principle anyways. I end up grinding off a little bit of the valve to make sure that the gap between the valve and the valve lifter is according to spec. Usually what happens is that there's no gap between the valve and the valve lifter on these little engines, especially on the exhaust valve. So therefore, the exhaust valve cannot shut properly in the seat, and it allows compression to escape through because it's not creating a tight seal on the head. It's a common problem I find, and once you fix it, you get a lot more power out of your small engine. And also when you do a valve job like that, if the seat was bad, you could use a Niue valve cutter tool to just make sure that the seat is nice and round so that the valve fits in there perfectly. So that's about it for today's Q&A. I want to thank all the YouTubers who sent me some monetary gifts. I want to let you know that I do use the money wisely. I pump it all back into my shop here and toward the cost of creating these videos. There's always some kind of equipment that needs to be updated, cameras, computer equipment, and so forth. So there's quite a bit of cost there involved. And I like to use good equipment when I make these videos. So thanks again, your generosity is really appreciated. So thanks for watching. Have yourselves a great weekend. Hopefully there's enough snow for you guys to go snowmobiling out there. And we'll see you next Friday.